Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's session, Cost-Saving Steps to Delivery Perfection. Before we begin, there are a few things I'd like to review. First, you have entered today's session in listen-only mode. Please type any questions you have in the Q&A box located on your screen. We will address them after the presentation. Also, as a reminder, today's session is being recorded, and a copy will be sent to you via email after the live event. Now let's get started with today's session. Today's presenter is Cindy Brandt. Cindy is the Senior Director of Strategic Alliances and Product Marketing and has been with Omnitracs Roadnet for 17 years. Cindy?
Thank you very much, Carly, for the introduction this morning. Today we really wanted to take a little bit of time and talk about what is exactly the perfect delivery. I think it's a term that everybody uses a lot, but how do we actually quantify what it is? How do we understand how much imperfect deliveries are actually costing us every day? Second, let's talk a little bit about how mobile actually affects that perfect delivery. How can you make it better? What are all the components that can go into mobile to make a delivery really more seamless to everybody? And then third, which KPIs should you track and how can you actually track these? I think that we can do a lot of things to make deliveries better, but without being able to manage the information that's coming from those deliveries and the different delivery statistics, we can in no way claim to make them quote-unquote perfect. Fourth, cost-saving benefits. So let's really understand if we move along that perfect delivery spectrum, what kind of savings will we see? And then last but not least, what are really the actionable next steps? What steps can you take today to move forward to become part of the perfect delivery? So I just want to start and ask just kind of a rhetorical question, but what does the perfect delivery look like to you? And, I encourage everybody to just take a couple of seconds and think about what's your frame of reference when somebody says, hey, we want to make the perfect delivery. While you're thinking about that, though, let's go ahead and take our first poll of the session. So today, how are you using mobile devices in transportation? 1, we just use them for tracking and dispatching. 2, we plan to use them. We don't use them right now. Or 3, we have 0 plans to use them for tracking or dispatching. We'll let everyone kind of weigh in here for a couple of seconds while we wait for everyone else to think about it. Again, start thinking about what makes that perfect delivery for you. All right, we're going to go ahead and move forward now. So, wow, a third, a third, and a third. It's not often we see such perfect round numbers here. So we clearly have some folks on the phone today that are already using them, some that don't ever plan on using them, and some folks that are really investigating why they should be using them right now. The biggest thing that I always say to people is if it was easy, everybody would do it. And I can't believe I actually found a transportation manager shirt that kind of laid out all the different problems that everybody has. But you know what? Every day in the industries that we are in, we face more and more challenges. The world is changing exponentially, right before our eyes when we talk about all the new smart technology, omni-channel distribution, all the new ways that we can we can attract customers, retain customers, and get products to customers. But people are also saying, hey, can you do this cheaper? Can you change the way you deliver product? Could you maybe ship it via UPS or put it in an Uber as opposed to delivering on a truck? All these different things people have to start to think about now. And, of course, last but not least, do it faster. I don't know about you guys, but I get pretty impatient now if I can't get something online in 2 days. Amazon Prime has completely ruined me. But because of that whole phenomena of the Amazon Primes, the omni-channel, the Prime Now, the online grocers of the world, everyone's asking for their products to come to them faster. So again, if everybody would do it, if it was easy to do, but it's not because we face more and more challenges every day, more and more cost pressures are applied to us, and speed is also a factor. So that's a transportation manager, but what about the drivers? I always say it's like an octopus with a different tool in every single hand. We ask drivers to do so many things. We ask them to be ambassadors of our brand and our products. We ask them to be the nicest people in the world when they deliver those products. We ask them to know information about the customers that we don't necessarily trap and take care of inside of our CRM and our ERP systems. We ask them to deliver everything perfectly to make sure there aren't any missed deliveries. We have to ask them to count product, take surveys of customers, and be compliant with the law. So we really do ask a lot of drivers. They are truly professionals that oftentimes we don't necessarily give enough credit for. I think that it's always interesting for me when I take a step back and think about all the different things that drivers are responsible for. It's amazing that we're able to attract and retain them and keep our turnover rates relatively low in the last mile solutions. So one more poll. What do you think that you personally within your organization will address in the next 2 years? Is your top one the ELD mandate? Is it all about DVIR, maybe signature capture or chain of custody, reducing missed deliveries, or maybe even improving your driver workflow so they don't forget to do something? It's really important that we start to think about all the different ways that we can solve driver problems on the road. And a lot of things we're trying to do to get people to the perfect delivery is really to eliminate roadblocks. Let's take the paper out of the cab. Let's take, the drivers having to multitask and remember 50 different things while they're at every stop. Let's reduce all of that. So let's see, what's on the mind what's on everybody's mind right now? So I guess I'm really not surprised that the top two are the ELD mandate, missed deliveries, and workflow. The ELD mandate, it's just an extra layer of paperwork that we're trying to remove from folks so they don't have to keep those paper logs anymore. Missed deliveries. Missed deliveries are expensive. If it costs $55 to go out to a customer once, to go out twice is $110. And then, of course, improving workflow. We find that that's incredibly important for folks because they want to make sure that the drivers aren't missing tasks that have to happen while they're on the road. So let's dive in from a mobile perspective, what really makes, quote unquote, a perfect delivery. A perfect delivery can mean a lot of different things to a lot of different people. There's no fewer than 12 different bubbles here. Everything from e-logs to DVIR to stop workflow, chain of custody, driver notifications, customer notifications, geocodes, arrivals and departures, navigation. These are just a couple of things that are incredibly important to people. And all these components really and truly, to me, make up the perfect delivery. You can have pieces of it, of course. You don't have to have all 12 bubbles here to be perfect, but these are all the different things that can help reduce cost in your deliveries. So we're not going to talk about all 12 of them today. I just kind of grabbed some of the highlights, but I thought it'd be interesting if we really have a conversation about some of the most expensive tasks that we don't automate in order to make up the perfect delivery. So first and foremost, as we saw right there on the poll there with the ELD mandate, that this is top of mind for a lot of people. Doing the DVIRs as well as logging your hours is the first task that your driver has to do every day. And without automating it, we're talking about two different logbooks, two different pieces of paper. They walk around the truck, they pencil with that DVIR, and they're not even thinking about it sometimes and what they're doing. Then they got to walk that piece of paper back inside. It does a lot of time when you start to add it up. We estimate it's about $705 per year per driver just to comply with both ELD and DVIR paperwork. We want to eliminate that paperwork from the driver, make his job easier, free up time, get him on the road faster, and at the end of the day, save money. A lot of people say, hey, well, what's compliance got to do with, making a perfect delivery? Well, if it's just one more thing that the driver becomes distracted by, it's one more thing that introduces risk into making that perfect delivery. So the second big thing is trip management. I'm sure that just about every one of you folks send a driver out with a paper manifest and maybe even a stack of invoices to tell them where to go when. Again, the goal here is eliminate that paper, eliminate the time they're shuffling around. What happens if you have Cindy's Bar and Cindy's Restaurant? They're two different organizations located on different sides of town, but they certainly sounded alike, and you switch those invoices, you pick the wrong product, and take the wrong product off the truck at the wrong stop. Again, it's a significant impact to make those missed deliveries. You have to go pick stuff up, take it back to the other spot. It becomes very expensive. Plus, there's a lot of pre-route time involved. I'm going through those invoices, going through the manifest, moving stops around on my own as a driver, looking at maps. It just really doesn't make too much sense. And then the last component of this is really about the where's my truck concept, the ETA to the drivers. What time will somebody be there? Let's use that GPS tracking to figure things out. We estimate that in driver time and the cost to print manifests and invoices, you're really talking about almost $3,600 per year per driver. So you can see that by not automating and reducing risk to create a perfect delivery, you're really introducing cost back into the equation for every driver. The second key thing here is load verification. Making sure that you're scanning product onto a vehicle before you even leave the depot to make sure that, number one, you have the right product, and number two, that you can reduce any shorts, reduce any damages, and to really get away from having to go back and deliver to a customer. This is an incredibly expensive activity when we really look at it with maybe one or two, with actually just simply one missed delivery a day. It's about almost $13,400 a year per driver, and that's just looking at one redelivery per day. Also, we want to make sure that with load verification that they're scanning off the vehicle, so we make sure that they're dropping the right product off when they get to each of those customers. The next concept is really about chain of custody. I've seen chain of custody over the last 10 years become incredibly hot and critical for people. They want to make sure that they can show that, the manager of the bar, the manager of the home, the manager of the service center, whoever it might be that you're delivering product to or dropping product off, has received that product. They've received that product in a good working order, and they also know what they're on the hook for. So kind of a delivery receipt or a summary receipt. So signature capture, proof of delivery using pictures. I always use, kind of furniture as my example. Whenever I get a couch or a chair or a sofa, they make sure they bring it in, they ask me where I want it, they take a picture so that it can be then archived so they know that, hey, Cindy Brandt received this sofa, she asked me to put it in this particular corner, and we did that. Again, just one missed delivery per day is a little over $13,000, so it becomes very expensive very quickly if you can't prove that chain of custody. Proactive notifications, kind of that where's my truck text message or voicemail. I would like to say that I think Omnichannel, again, is the one that's created such an urgency for this. Getting our text messages when our UPS package or our postal service package is actually dropped off, or it's ready to be shipped out, or it's arrived at our home. We really have created an environment where, whether it's consumers or businesses, we really truly want to understand, hey, where's my driver, where's my order, where's my truck, and when is it going to be here to get here yet? There's calls come in from everywhere, and I think that's one of the things that people don't realize. It's become so incredibly expensive because we not only have our customers calling in, but we also have sales representatives calling in and asking us, hey, what's going on with this truck today? What's going on with this route? Did my order get to my number one customer yet? So we've done some research with customers, and it's almost $19 a phone call to answer that where's my truck question when you're not using a mobile device to capture GPS information and feeding it back into the actual versus planned. And using, again, some numbers from our customers, that adds up to a little over $14,000 per route per year in where's my truck phone call costs. Next, geocoding. Figuring out where the latitude and longitude of that customer is. I know this sounds more like a maintenance issue, but at the end of the day, if the driver can't find the address, if they can't find the dock or the yard to deliver to, we're not helping them save time or money. We want to make sure that we can get people to the right spot the first time and not the right spot 5 minutes later after they've been looking around. That 5 minutes at every stop can add up throughout the day to almost an hour's worth of time for them spending looking of where to be, what dock to be at. Navigation is one that goes hand in hand with the geocode. Like we said with the geocode, we want to get the drivers to exactly the right spot. We want them to follow the actual route path that we created. If you think about just the recent bridge collapse in Atlanta, Google Maps doesn't know about that yet. It hasn't been updated in real time. Google Maps doesn't know that 85 now isn't a viable solution for going around the city of Atlanta. So being able to get drivers to the right place at the right time and follow the actual route path that you planned, because maybe you disabled I-85 now in your routing system, becomes critically important. Also allows for you to have accurate driver performance metrics. Having accurate metrics for actual versus planned is important because you want to be able to compare apples versus apples. This is the route plan I gave you for today. Did you follow that route plan? Yes or no? If you give them a route plan and then send them off with a navigation app that can't adhere to the paths that you've chosen in the route plan, it's very, very difficult to actually hold them accountable in an actual versus planned scenario. So if you misnavigate to just one stop per route per day, it's literally about $1,400 a year. Workflow. This is one of the key areas that folks said were very important to them as well. Part of the perfect delivery is making sure that every step of the delivery is taken care of. That might be a survey of the loading dock. It might be a survey of the customer inside. It might be a survey of shelf space. It might be a list of tasks that the driver needs to follow at each and every stop. Workflow to us can be very dynamic and defined as it needs to be on the fly, but we want to make sure that A, drivers are performing the tasks that they need to, B, they're capturing the necessary data to bring back to the office to deal with, and last, we want to really eliminate additional back office work. So marrying data together, transcribing pieces of paper. If we can remove that, and we know that from a digital footprint perspective that they've done the 10 tasks that they need to at that site, we can eliminate that duplicate back-end paperwork. So we estimate that at a little over $10,000 per route per year. Accurate deliveries, making sure the right product gets there. We talked about load verification earlier, really knowing, hey, what's on the vehicle? Is the right stuff on the vehicle? Now we're making sure that the right stuff gets off the vehicle. We scan each of these items. The system will yell at us, or beep, if you will, to let us know that perhaps we've picked up the wrong package. We haven't delivered enough packages. But it also lets us do overshort damage by line item using barcodes. So quick scans as opposed to having to write something down on a piece of paper as a swap out or typing into multiple columns. Making sure that we have accurate deliveries, again, is very important. These missed deliveries add up. So we had 3 different items within the discussion today that each could end up in a little over $13,000 of cost a year by creating missed deliveries. So scorecards. Now we start to kind of move into the second piece of this where we talk about how do you measure drivers and how do we know what's happening? But it's not just about drivers. It's customers, drivers, and vehicles that we need to understand performance. We need to understand which of our drivers are performing the best, which ones are performing the worst, why are they performing badly, and what can we do to make change. That's what scorecards help us do, identify trends among the drivers for things that we need to be able to change. As we pull telematics information in, we can also rank and rate our vehicles. Are older vehicles now getting less miles per gallon? Are they burning more fuel? We can look at the trends that are happening relative to the age of our vehicles and understand if we need to make changes. And the last piece of scorecards is sometimes the most important. Obviously, we want our drivers to be very efficient, but we also want to be able to proactively publish information out to our existing customers to let them know there's been 100 deliveries this year. Of those 100 deliveries, 95% of the time we've been on time or on time. The other 5% of the time we've been early, and maybe 1% we've been late. It's really making people understand how well they're actually getting serviced by the drivers. And I think that's an important component of a perfect delivery, because if you can provide information out to show how well you're servicing a customer, it allows you to do many other things. So let's jump into our third poll of the day as we get into scorecarding. Do you measure your driver KPIs today? Yes, no, or no, but we want to? So again, pretty evenly split here. Some do, some don't, and some actually want to be able to do that. Hey, that's a good thing. I think it's not uncommon for me to go out and sit down with customers and say, I'd love to measure KPIs, but I either don't know what to measure, I can't get to the data, or sometimes I don't know how to make people care about it. So we've created scorecarding tools and tools for KPIs and benchmarks in order to make life a little bit easier. So when you think about it, you really have to start to think about your delivery KPIs and your driver KPIs. Personally, I like to have the heat maps like this that show me green, yellow, red. Red is not good, yellow's cautionary, green is good. It lets me know which one of my drivers are driving well, how many on-time deliveries those drivers have had. But it also allows me to see trends. But on the other hand, I have to normalize this data too and look at it per so many units of time, units of distance. It's important that you normalize that data to really get an accurate picture of it. But to me, KPIs are the keys to really unlocking the true power behind all these pieces of software that we have inside of our four walls. So driver methods, on-time deliveries, delivery trends, being able to defend yourselves when customers say your driver Joe is always late. These are important things that we can start to track with our KPIs. As we start to track our KPIs, we can also start to implement and create change. So it never fails that every time I go out and we start to talk about KPIs and business analytics and business intelligence tools, people always say, hey, Cindy, can you tell me what are some of the key KPIs for drivers? And also, what are the key KPIs for our customers? Well, let's start with drivers. To me, there's really two types, time-based and driving-based. Time-based for me is how many miles have you gone off your route? Have you made any unplanned stops? How many unplanned stops per 100 miles driven do you make? How many times are you on time? How many times have you arrived on time and departed on time? Are you spending the right or the calculated amount of time at the customer, or too much, or sometimes even worse, too little? The driver-based KPIs is really looking at speeding as a percent of miles or total time, harsh events per 100 mile, idling events per 100 mile. So when they're driving based, to me, that's an action that we can change with our safety policies and our training policies for drivers. Customer KPIs, or KPIs that you should always want to show your customers, really are the total number of deliveries per year, how many off-day deliveries did they have, how much product was actually delivered, and then time-based relative to what percentage of your arrivals were on time, late, or early. More and more people are starting to demand and understand the level of service that we're providing. We want to make sure that folks have tools out in front of them to show exactly, how well they are performing relative to their customers. Customers complain, and they've got one data point in their head that Joe was late today, and they say, Joe, he's a terrible driver, he's late all the time, but in reality, he really was only late once out of 100 or 120 deliveries. It's really important to be able to have these scorecards and these KPIs so that you can back yourself up. So we've talked about a lot of stuff right now. We've talked about all the different components that can make up a perfect delivery. We've talked about some of the costs relative to making imperfect deliveries. We've given you a little bit of some of the key KPIs to understand. Just to put this in context as we start to get towards the end of the presentation here, this is your cost of not striving for a perfect delivery. It's just under $6,000 a month per vehicle. So per driver or per vehicle, whichever unit you want to look at, it's $70,000 a year. And that's just a couple of missed deliveries a day, bad trip management, not working on compliance, not having good solid chain of custody information. These are all sunk costs that we've built into our business. If we could figure out how to unbuild them out of our business and maybe redeploy these employees towards something that is more revenue producing, it really would be an incredible opportunity for us. So what can you do today? Number one, just sit down and define the process that a driver does every day. Ride with your drivers. See how much paperwork they're doing. See what they actually do every day. And it's got to be from the start of the day, from the moment they walk through the door to the moment that they walk out of the door to go home at the end of the day. Second, really understand the process that the back office goes through. Are they typing things in from paper manifests? Are they transposing documents? Are they typing information off a piece of paper and putting it into a centralized database? What are those folks doing every day? And how much printing are they doing? Third, identify where are the big spots mistakes are actually being made. Is it in the office? Is it out at your customer stops? Do you have more missed deliveries, or do you have more out-of-route miles? All of these things take away from that concept of the perfect delivery. 3 key questions I ask every customer as we start to talk about mobile. 1, what are your manual processes? 2, what involves paper? Because sometimes people don't equate manual processes and paper together. And 3, of those 2 items above, what do you think can be automated? We don't want to remove people. We want to make people more efficient so that they can be doing more revenue-generating things. So I think now we'll throw it open for some Q&A. I think we've got a Q&A box going here inside our platform. If you go ahead and type any questions in that you might have, we'll be happy to answer them. So Carly, I'll let you queue up those questions.
Sure, Cindy. Thanks so much. So we have a couple really good questions. I'm going to start with this one. So we talked a little bit about KPIs. So if I wanted to measure KPIs, where do I start?
That's a great question. I always say just start with a plan. Figure out how long should your route really be today. Watch those drivers coming back. You can start with the basic stuff, but at the end of the day, you have to decide what's important to you. What are you being measured on? What are the metrics that the CEO and the CFO are most concerned about? And by the way, let's not forget that they speak two different languages. One speaks a visual language, and one speaks a finance or numbers language. So we have to put it in their language as well. But we want to make sure that we understand what we want to measure, and then we need to figure out how do we measure it. Do we have the right tools, yes or no?
Great. Here's another good question. What is the best piece of advice you could give someone that wants to use or start using mobile devices?
So I think the best piece of advice that I can give somebody is really document their process. I go into companies every day that want to use mobile but don't know why they want to use mobile. They just think it's going to be more effective for them. The people that actually have sat down and thought about, hey, these are the things that I'd like to change in the organization because they cause me pain. They cause me physical pain. They make me stay up at night. They cost me money. Those are the ones that are most successful because they really understand how they're trying to change mobile. Mobile devices can do a ton of stuff. Think about the 15 things you want to do, divide it in half, and then divide it in half again, and pick 1/4 of the items that you want to accomplish each year. Set quantitative metrics on how you'll know if you're successful and measure yourself from there.
Great. Now, kind of going back along with that, what do you think is the biggest challenge moving from paper to mobile?
Oh, that's a good question, too. Moving from paper to mobile, the biggest challenge is definitely driver acceptance. As soon as you start to introduce a mobile device into drivers, they start to realize that their lives are going to change and they're going to be tracked more. I suggest that you start with the drivers themselves and have conversations about why you're going to mobile. And a lot of times, they'll start to understand as you present the why, not, hey, we don't think you do your job, but we want to make your jobs easier, we want to get you home sooner, we want you to be safer. At some point then, they just start to really think about it and say, hey, this could make an impact to my lives. Now, having said that, we're also entering a stage where younger folks are coming into distribution. And these are folks where if you do not have a mobile device, if you do not have technology to assist them in the cab of the vehicle to get their job done, they're not going to stay either. If you think about it, these are folks that have been geotagged and using geocaching, and they've been, putting up their status and location for their entire lives. They expect technology to make things easier. And if they get into the cab of a truck and step backwards, they're not going to be happy.
Great. This question switches gears a little bit. How do I calculate my own return on investment?
That's a good question. It's a tough one too, right? Again, it's really understanding what processes were painful to you today, which ones are hard. Then who involved, what's their pay rate? You can break everything down to a per minute and really understand how much does it cost me per minute every time X happens. That's like with that missed delivery, just one missed delivery a day, close to $14,000 a year. It's a pretty simple calculation. When we estimate average cost per stop, the time it takes for somebody to reschedule that order, time it takes for the driver to deal with it, et cetera, that's how you start to calculate your ROI. 90% of your numbers will be based around people's time.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Cindy. So it looks like we got through most of the questions. So just as a reminder to all of our registrants that today's session is being recorded, so you will receive a copy of the recording within 24 hours after the live event. I want to thank everyone for their time, for joining us. Cindy, thank you so much for a great presentation, and we hope you all have a great day. Thanks so much.